Welcome to Sustainable the Sustainability Alliance. First Thursday, we're thrilled to have you join us today. You are here with the Sustainability Alliance for First Thursday. Thank you very much for being here. And we're going to get started early at the top of the hour because we have a lot to go over today and a topic of great concern. So today, thank you. You're attending today's First Thursday on local biodiversity, monarchs, and our pollinators. So let me see here. Sorry, I just lost my notes. Hold on. Right back with you. There we go. Okay. This month, we're excited to welcome our guest speaker, Rick Kotarsky, the curator of conservation and scientific advancement at the Tulsa Zoo, to explore the critical relationship between monarch pollinators and the health of our environment. So thank you for being with us today. And we're looking forward to the insights and expertise that Rick has to share with us today. Again, you are joining us today and supporting sustainability in our community. And thank you for supporting that as well as the Sustainability Alliance. Teresa right now is going to launch an intro poll. These are very important for us to be able to track and see if we are capturing the things that are important to you. So please take a moment to fill out that poll. And thank you, Teresa, for launching that. Again, the programs that we're bringing our viewers like you, such as First Thursday's events, would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. And we want to say a big thank you to the following sponsors who help us bring education, resources, and a community connection to your screen each month. So thank you to our lead sponsor, Williams, and our neighborhood partners, Public Service Company of Oklahoma and PSO Wind Choice, and our community advocates, Cavanta, the Met, One Oak, Save Our Streams, Spirit Aerosystems, Tulsa Farmers Market, and Sustainable Advisors Alliance. So give them a round of applause, send them a thank you in the text, in the chat, because truly we could not do this without them. And if you would like to join a list of sponsors, reach out to Morgan Fairley in the chat. She'll throw her contact information in there. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love to celebrate you celebrating sustainability. So thank you. And also want to thank my wonderful Sustainable Alliance board members that, again, we couldn't do the work we do without their support. We appreciate all that they do and to further our mission. So, and Mike Teague and Rick Kotarsky are a few of those board members. They're here with us today. And I want to thank you all and gracious for your continued support in every way. Finally, I'd like to thank my incredibly growing and wonderful staff at the Sustainability Alliance who work really hard to bring these programs to you. We've been a busy team, especially for the last couple of years. And so thank you to Teresa Kerrigan, Jill Maud, Morgan Fairley, Zoe McGowan, and Missy Lukenbach. So send them a note in the chat. And if you have words of encouragement, we'd love that. So also, if you're an individual and want to help support the work we do rely on that as well. So becoming an individual supporter of the Sustainability Alliance, quick and easy, it's $25, and your name can be added to the growing list of change makers in our community. No amount is too small, no matter what. So again, we really do appreciate the support to help further the sustainability education, Bellman Sustainability Awards, First Thursday events, B2B Case for Sustainability Series, Scorecard Program, TerraScore app, and so much more. So thank you for joining and being a part of supporting that. There'll be, click on the link and you can donate today. See that there in the chat. We also love to invite you to our next Green Drinks. We held one a couple months ago. It was well received. Our next one will be next Thursday, May 11th. It'll be from 5 to 7 at Neff Brewing. And we'll do some more posts out on our social media opportunities about this event. But Green Drinks aims to be a low-key social gathering where you connect with each other, network, and make our community more sustainable and more integrated. So with such a great time last time, we hope that you'll join us. And also, we'll have some pollinator loving plants we'll be giving to everyone that joins us. So please come. We'd love to see you and grab a drink with us and enjoy just visiting and connecting. So, also, we do, if you can't make it out, we also have a Sustainability Alliance Facebook group and help better connect our community. If you'd like to connect with sustainably minded people, join our Facebook group today. Teresa will put that link in the chat for you. And we'd love to hear from you. So now I'd like to turn it over to Morgan Fairley, who will introduce our digital booths. Morgan?
Hello, everyone. Sorry about that. I had a little mishap. Here we go. All right, so we're just going to start here with a video from our lead sponsor, Williams. They'd like to share their message with you.
At Williams, we're focused on adding new technology and operating practices that deliver right here, right now reductions in global emissions, cutting-edge emissions measuring and monitoring, certifiable and transparent emissions data, real-time energy optimization across the natural gas value chain, integration and delivery of the fuels of the future, meeting global energy demand and global climate goals. For us, this is just the beginning. Williams, we make clean energy happen.
Great. So we also have our neighborhood partners who sponsor this program. One of those is PSO, and they would like to share more information with you about their solar calculator and rebate opportunities. Visit them online to learn more, but you can also reach out directly to Carrie at krroland@aep.com if you have any questions or would like assistance finding out opportunities for your home or company. Next up, we have the Met. They offer recycling services throughout the year at their drop-off sites and also special recycling events. The Met proudly provides meaningful employment opportunities for individuals with disabilities as well. Find out more by visiting metrecycle.com. We also have Save Our Streams. They're a department of the city of Tulsa that promotes healthy waterways and pollution prevention through their storm water quality program. From environmental inspections and household pollutants collection, they offer various services to help you help our streams. Get in touch via email at stormwaterquality@cityoftulsa.org. We also have the Tulsa Farmers Market, which takes place every Saturday from May to November in the Kendall-Whittier district. The market opened this year on April 1st. So if you've never been, we encourage you to make this your first season to support local farmers and makers. Check them out every Saturday in Kendall-Whittier's district. And last but not least, Sustainable Advisors Alliance. This is an innovative co-op financial advisor group that can help you manage your investment portfolio in a sustainable manner and provide solutions for your profit bottom line. They offer no minimum requirements to start investing your dollars today. So get in touch with Julie Skye to learn more by visiting their website. Thank you so much to all of our sponsors.
Thank you, Morgan. And now to our presentation. So Rick Kotarsky is with the Tulsa Zoo. He is the curator of conservation and scientific advancement. Rick has always had a passion for wildlife and outdoors, and growing up in Western Pennsylvania, and followed his passion for conservation and his college studies with receiving a Bachelor's of Science degree in wildlife and fishery ecology management from the Oklahoma State University, as well as also earned his master's degree in museum studies and leadership from Oklahoma University. Rick began his zoo career 24 years ago, and over the past 19 years, he's been managing wildlife conservation and research programs worldwide in the Tulsa Zoo efforts to save endangered and threatened species. Rick also manages the Tulsa Solid Waste and Sustainability programs, which began in 2012. He currently, on the Sustainability Alliance, he's currently a Sustainability Alliance scorecard coach, Chair and co-founder of the Monarch Initiative of Tulsa, co-founder and state steering committee member of Oklahoma Monarchs and Pollinator collaborator, also known as Okies for Monarchs. And Rick recently became the liaison for North American Monarch Butterfly Conservation SAFE, Saving Animals from Extinction programs. And in the current board, board of directors member of the Oxley Nature Center, the Endangered Primate Foundation, and the Sustainability Alliance. Thank you, Rick, very much. Let's welcome Rick Kotarsky.
Thanks a lot, Corey. It's great to have the opportunity to speak to everyone again about monarchs and conservation. Anybody that knows me, I love to just talk about conservation. And so this is kind of like just being in my wheelhouse, have this opportunity. And I will.
All right. Thank you again for joining us, and just learned so much from you over the years. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say today. So I think you're booting up your presentation there. All right. Great.
Are we good?
Very good.
All right. So today I'm going to talk about exactly what you see on the screen there, monarch, butterfly, and pollinator conservation. I'm going to highlight some of the issues that we can all help kind of counteract, some of the things that are going on within the state, some opportunities for folks to get involved, depending on if you want to put a habitat at your home or your school, or you have a nice piece of land that you would like to put a habitat in. Kind of talk about just really just about monarchs and what they represent in this whole situation. So obviously the obvious thing about pollinators and their importance is that they do a lot for us for our food, but they actually represent 90% of how the world's flowering plants are pollinated. And here in Oklahoma, 30% of our food is reliant from pollinators. And in the United States as a whole, there's 150 food crops. And you can see some of listing there of some of your favorite foods that could be impacted as we continue to lose pollinators. And so the monarch is pretty incredible. And by now, a lot of people know the kind of the story and the journey of how they leave Mexico in the spring. They come through Tulsa in early April, and then come back through Tulsa in September. They make that long trip all the way up to Canada. It takes multiple generations, and that last generation makes that 1,500 so mile trip all the way back. And what does all that mean, and how does that represent pollinators in general? Well, what it means is that there's something askew, and so the monarchs have unfortunately been declining somewhere upwards of 85 to 90% of a decline over the past 30 years, which is really alarming. They have had, as you can see on this chart, the ups and downs, but during the ups and downs, there's been also this continuous decline. And Chip Taylor, who started the Monarch Watch program many years ago, said the only way we can do that is basically trying to rebuild habitat, and most importantly, by planting milkweed, which is the host species and the only plant that the monarchs will utilize to lay their eggs on, and that the caterpillars utilize for food. So what is the problem? And so, how do monarchs play a role in this? Well, anybody that is in this realm will admit usually that monarchs aren't actually the greatest of all the pollinators, and when it really comes down to it. But what monarchs represent is that they're an indicator species. And what that means is that basically they're telling us that there is something askew, and that if we continue on the path that we kind of have been as humans sharing resources on this earth, that things are going to get much worse for us. That monarchs are really an indicator of where things could unfortunately go. And so there's some confusion about monarchs, and everyone has heard that they have been enlisted as an endangered species, but that is true, but that is through the IUCN, and the IUCN is the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And so they are listed as endangered through that organization. They've been red listed. Of all the species that this organization oversees in the red listing, only 10% are invertebrates. So it's a really big deal that monarchs are actually included in that list as an endangered species. But here in the United States, they are not listed as endangered. As far back as 2014, it was petitioned for them to be listed under the Federal Endangered Species Act. And in 2020, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service decided that they are having issues, but it was listed as warranted but precluded. And basically what that means is that monarch butterflies meet the definition of a threatened and endangered species, but basically the federal government just lacks the resources to take further action at this time. Now, there is some good news in this, is that the monarch is currently slated to be listed, to be proposed to be listed, I believe, in 2024. So as of right now, they're here in the United States, they have no legal protection. And another issue with this protection is that there's many unfortunate other species on this list that they have to get through. And I want to say there's probably upwards of 300. So it's quite the process. But the good news is that we have the science and we have the solution. So it's really just a matter of us taking action without that label of endangered here in the United States. So some of the things that are affecting monarchs, obviously, a lot of things that are in the news is climate. Probably the two biggest thing are the chemicals that are being used through different ways and in different purposes, and for us, how it impacts us is with really how we can make an impact is with our yards and chemicals, and then habitat loss. So 2.2 million acres is estimated is lost every year, just native plants to agriculture and other things, just human encroachment or urbanization, so on and so on. So what's the solution? I talked about a little bit earlier, to offset that loss by creating habitats ourselves, being involved with trying to make a difference. And so some of the things that have happened over the past 10 years, since I've been involved with this over the past 6 or 7 years, there's been some great progress being made. Agricultural processes have changed a little bit, where there's being land set aside. There's this practices called hedge grows, which I'll show a little bit later, that has really helped and made some headwaves to creating habitat. Rights of way programs, creating linear habitat. I'll show some slides, or a slide with what our Oklahoma Department of Transportation has been doing, making some great strides, great programs in creating habitats through right-of-ways. And then utilize protected land. So if there's anyone on this call that has land, I highly recommend you calling Michael Padden at Legacy Land Trust. And there's all kinds of ways that you can create protection for habitat that's in existence, so it doesn't become something later on. But for us, immediately, what we can all do is for sure is urban land and planting habitats. So just a few seconds ago, I talked about hedge grows. So these are hedge grows. It's kind of unique. I know that some of this is being done in Western Oklahoma by some farmers. You can read more about it on Okies for Monarch's website. There's a story that was done a few years back about some of the farmers who have been proactive in this measure. But it really is a great way to utilize the land and accomplish two things with having the the crops and the corn and whatever else we need, but also providing this important these ecosystems. And so the native bees and other pollinators, it's estimated that it costs about $3 billion for the pollination that's needed for these grows. So the linear habitat that I talked about earlier, the ODOT, they've been doing a great job. And one of our cohorts, I think Stephanie's on the call, Von Sale, is part of the Okies for Monarchs and the OMPC. They've been just doing a great job with putting in these native habitats along the right-of-ways, along the highways. We just had a meeting the other day and she reported, I think she said over 2,200 acres of habitat of right-of-way areas have been created. This is along I-40. They planted a huge area at basically an old rest area that's been retired that is now a native habitat. And then along the corridor, I-35 corridor, south from Oklahoma City to Dallas and along State Highway 51, they made great strides with changing their mowing practices and actually managing for native habitat. And I think they're looking, she said, to do another 2,000 just in this year alone. So that's just amazing, the progress that's been made there. And then I talked a little bit about land legacy. And so this is a great organization that basically takes your land and creates a conservation easement. If anybody watches Yellowstone, you know, there's a big controversy in that storyline, how the land that's out there has been turned into a conservation easement. So if you have a big plot of land, or even if you have a few acres, you can contact these folks. You still own the land. It just gets designated to be protected. And it's really a great resource. So for us, how can we help? Really, it's about putting in plants in the ground and creating habitat. And I tell people, just engaging with so many people over the years, they will always have ideas and have some concerns. And one of the things that comes up is that they'll say that they live in an apartment or condominium. And as you can see in that picture there, hey, you can still do it. You just have to have, you know, multiple planters. It's a little more intensive as far as maintenance, because you do have to water, and some plants, you know, Oklahoma native plants have deep roots and they like to spread out, and they can suffer a little bit of shock being in these pots. So you, depending on the plant, you may have to replant multiple times over the years just to give them more space. But other than, besides just getting plants in the ground or on your balcony, participating in citizen science projects really helps. There's lots of things that you can get involved with here in town through Blue Thumb or through the Oxy Nature Center and the zoo. We have multiple butterfly counts throughout the year. There are bird counts. There's, you know, just supporting conservation groups and nonprofits. Participating in programs like Yard by Yard. One of the last slide I have is about the Yard by Yard program. But really talking about pollinators and having engagements with people, talking about the issues, getting involved within your neighborhood, your church or school. When I'm going to go over later about just considerations for starting a habitat. And one of the biggest considerations really before you start doing anything is to communicate with your neighbors, communicate with people that are going to be impacted by what you're planning to do in your yard, depending on the scale of what you're wanting to do. So here's some examples of some of the habitats that we've put into here at the zoo. We go to great lengths to tell and show people how you can replicate this at your home. We have three registered Monarch way stations through Monarch Watch. We also have registered our garden through Okies for Monarch and got that cool sign there that you see. And it's just, you know, it's tremendous. Its catalyst is the Monarch, but really when you put these in and it's designed for the Monarch, it actually helps everything. It helps other invertebrates, it helps birds, it helps mammals. It's everything is connected. And that's why the monarch is so important as an indicator species, because we start losing those connections, it's going to be a really big deal, unfortunately. So if you're looking for support in the community, there's lots of initiatives, there's lots of groups, and I'm only going to go over 3 here real quickly, but there's lots. One of them is the Monarch Initiative Tulsa, which was started a few years ago through the Gilcrease the Garden Center. And lots of folks have been involved with it from the beginning. You can see here some of those folks. The Sustainability Alliance has graciously become kind of the house of the program. And so you can go to the sustainability website and click on the Monarch tab and get all types of information about planting and plant list, and just really anything you really need to know. Also, lots of links to other resources like the Kerr Center, like Okies for Monarchs, and so on and so on. We do have a Facebook page that's really active, about 1,300 people. That's where people share ideas. They share knowledge about plants, what they're seeing, where they're seeing it, when they're seeing it. It's a great way to just share ideas, share pictures. A lot of people like to use that to discuss, hey, I was at so-and-so store the other day and found certain species of milkweed. There's also Okies for Monarchs, which was created about 5-6 years ago. And this is, so the Monarch Initiative Tulsa is kind of just a citywide kind of program. This is, I would consider a statewide program, which it is. This is a great group that was just a huge collaborative. The website is really robust. It's a great place to go to find the latest and greatest as far as events, as far as festivals, plant sales, just resources for every level of type of habitat that you may want to consider putting in, from a church, school, home to 30 acres of land. This is a resource you'd want to utilize and go to. And then also the last one was more of a national program. So the Monarch Watch, these are the folks that have really been doing it the longest, I believe, really grassroots, and provide even as many resources as you could ever want and information about starting a garden. They also have the information that's needed to register your garden and really kind of direct you in the components of what you need to have an official Monarch way station, which I'll go into here in a bit. But here's some more photos of things that the zoo and other collaborators over the years have put in. This was a few years back. Dewey Bartlett was the mayor, and this was done over by Oral Roberts University. Here's an actual habitat that was actually installed at Oral Roberts University. They were great because they propagated all the plant material in-house, which was fantastic. Here's one that Carla Grog and myself did at the Northeast campus here in town at the Tulsa Community College. This one's ongoing with a lot of people that are on this call probably right now. You can see the organizations on that billboard of all the organizations like the Met, Blue Thumb, and the City of Tulsa. This is Crow Creek Meadow. It's at 33rd and Peoria, where there were 3 empty house residential lots that were tore down, and then it was just manicured turf. And this group of folks, we've converted into a native Oklahoma meadow, and it's done wonders for Crow Creek, and it's a really nice green space within the neighborhood. And then lastly, this is another one that Carla and I did just a few years ago, right in the middle of the pandemic, at the Domestic Violence Intervention Center at Sheridan and Apache. And this is a way that not only benefits the health of the ecosystem and for pollinators, but this also is a huge benefit for folks who utilize their services, and folks who are dealing with maybe some mental health issues, stress, and so on. And so this is a great habitat that was put in. So you're now thinking like, okay, yeah, I want to put in a garden. So what are some of those things you need to consider? There is some, believe it or not. The outcomes aren't always the best or what's expected. So these are some things that you really need to consider as far as the exposure and the amount of sun you're going to have. You really need windbreaks. If you're out in an area where you live up on a hill and you know it's really windy, you really need to be kind of direct about where you want to put this, because butterflies aren't going to utilize and invertebrates aren't really going to utilize your garden and the resources if they can't maneuver onto the plant because it's so windy. Preparing the soil, this again kind of depends on where you live and this type of soil that you have. It varies throughout Tulsa. If you ever have any questions, I recommend you can actually take a soil sample to the Oklahoma State Extension office, and they will test your soil and kind of let you know what you need, if you need more nitrogen or whatever the case may be. Water source is important. You don't necessarily have to live near a lake or a creek or river. At my house, I put in whatchamacallit, can't think what they're called. You can see it in the picture. Sorry. But you can put in a bird bath. Yeah, that's what they're called, bird bath. It's right there in the text. So those are really handy. I put some rocks, some sandstone in it to allow invertebrates to utilize it. Birds utilize it as well. And kind of what's nice is you want to have a good viewing area. You want to be able to enjoy it. It's not necessarily like a necessity, but speaking from experience, I put it in my front yard right in front of my big bay window. And, I've spent hours just standing there in the morning with coffee, watching, enjoying everything that's utilizing the garden. And really what's important is following city ordinances. I've met with the city ordinance division and they told me outright, they always default first to HOAs. So if you do have an HOA, make sure you do look into what the rules and regulations are. As far as the city of Tulsa is concerned, it's really just about safety. So when you do put in a garden, don't put it in right next to a sidewalk. Don't have growth all the way up to the curb of the street or near your driveway. It's kind of common sense things. And they go to great lengths not to write citations for things like this, and really encourage people to put in these types of habitats. But you really need to talk to your neighbors first, kind of inform them and educate them, maybe get them inspired to put one in, and kind of explain what it's going to look like throughout its life cycle from early spring all the way through fall and winter. So once you think about some of those things, the next step is to look at getting plants. But before you buy plants, you really need to look at one of the big issues that was early on one of those slides was chemicals and insecticides and pesticides. And so neonics, organic phosphates, insectal soaps, all those types of things need to be avoided at all costs. And I always encourage people to ask whatever nursery or growery that you're at, to ask and to see what, if anything, has been treated. Some of the big box stores will have labels that say, but it's not always guaranteed that it will have a label that says if it's been treated with any of these chemicals here. But be aware of them. They don't do any good for invertebrates. And as you can see, the half-life of these is close to 4 years. So you could have a plant that was treated with this, have no idea, trying to figure out why you didn't see any monarchs the year before or the year after. And then that plant maybe die, but it's going to be living in the soil and for years, the chemical. So just be aware of that process and that situation. Other things to think about, kind of like the financial folks, you want to have diversity in your garden. You want things that bloom at different periods of the year, because monarchs utilize resources in 2 different times of the year coming through Tulsa, obviously in April and September, but also just birds and other invertebrates and other animals utilize different things at different times of the year. And most everything, I grew my entire garden from seed because I don't really have a green thumb. And so I just did seeds at first. And it was really kind of fascinating just to see what grew over the years. But everything that I did grow was a perennial. And that's kind of a low maintenance kind of process for someone like me, because every year it kind of evolves and change, and what comes up and what didn't survive, or what has propagated greatly under whatever conditions were for that season. Some plants do better during hotter or wetter seasons, but for the most part, everything in my garden has been perennial. So the next question is, what do I get? And this was a document that was created a few years back by Okies for Monarchs, and it really just emphasizes that diversity and what you should focus on when you're planting plants for pollinators and for monarchs in particular, is to have early bloom, mid bloom, and late bloom. Diversity, 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 just like your 401k. You're going to have the most success with diversity. We originally, I think when we were, my mind and others, we still kind of refer to this as the essential 12. And these plants they're not easy to grow. So when you go to a nursery and somewhere that sells plants, these aren't always the most readily available. So just because it is difficult to grow them in that situation, there is going to be a lot of there has been a lot of gain in nurseries focusing more on native plants. There is going to be a plant sale this weekend. It's Philbrook. It's their second annual native plant sale. And a lot of what they're doing is anchored and kind of centered around this list we're looking at. And at one point, the idea was that they were going to sell groups of plants, the essential 12 pack. And I don't know if that's came to fruition, but I'll find out tomorrow. The sale is going to be tomorrow and Saturday. And so if you're looking for native plants here in the near future, I would highly recommend going to the Philbrook Museum tomorrow after 3 o'clock. So to get a little more specific about plants, these are some of the plants that do really well in Tulsa. These are plants that we have here on zoo grounds. Again, spring, summer, and fall have that diversity. Here's even more plants and lists. These are pictures I took zoo grounds of different dragonflies and bees. Flies utilize these plants. You know, people don't realize flies are pollinators. And then milkweed. Milkweed is the big plant. It's the one that, you know, we really need to put stems in the ground. And just like these plants, that list I showed earlier, those essential 12, that was a deliberate list based on occurrences of plants in the counties throughout Oklahoma. So really, no matter where you live, those in Oklahoma, except for maybe some of the areas in the Panhandle, those plants will do well and be successful. So you really want, when you're looking at native plants and including milkweed, you want to plant things that are regional to where you live in the state of Oklahoma. There's about 26 different species of milkweed, but this list here of milkweed is the list that really that most people can agree to do really well for pollinators and for monarchs here, at least in the northeast part of the state and in Tulsa. I always get this asked about tropical, and yes, tropical have lots of success with monarchs. They really like it. And my theory is because it's one of the first species of milkweed that they're exposed to in Texas when they emerge from overwintering. But the caveat to that is if you do plant tropical, there's a little bit of controversy in that and having this species, because it does bloom late and it can create issues health-wise and migration-wise. And so I don't tell people not to use tropical, but when I do answer the question, I always say, if you do have tropical, after probably August, I would pull it out and replant it and keep it in your house, overwinter it, or do whatever, but to please remove it so that it doesn't create any kind of a stall situation with the migration back to Mexico. This is just a whole list of different milkweeds, and one of the milkweeds that was on that list was antelope. And you probably won't go to any nursery that I know of that has this plant available. There's the picture of it. It's really pretty. If you go out to the Quail Creek Meadow, you'll see this milkweed species. But as you can see, it's one of the most occurring milkweeds, not here here in Oklahoma. And so if you can find this particular species of milkweed, I recommend planting it. One thing I forgot to mention is those milkweeds, they have different environments that they also like. And so the showy milkweed is one that's super great nectar source. I've had hummingbirds visit mine. It doesn't get too tall, but it's kind of tall, but it's not as tall as swamp milkweed. And swamp milkweed is very favorable for monarchs, but it also can spread. It can shoot rhizomes under the ground and just spread out, but it does really like water. And so it's something to consider. This is good to plant near your roof line or a guttering system or something like that, to where it's going to get more water than normal. And then of course the butterfly milkweed, the stuff's just beautiful. I've seen it in a couple different colors. It blooms kind of late. It doesn't get too tall, but it is really popular and is utilized a lot. When I'm looking for eggs from monarchs, I really find a lot of the eggs on this milkweed. So you've got your plants and you've got your milkweed. Now what? I tell people there is a little bit of an art form to putting milkweeds in the ground, and you need to spread them apart 12 to 14 inches. You don't want to really bury it too deep, but you want to make sure that the roots are covered, and really water. And any of these native plants, they are drought tolerant. They do have deep roots. They are very long and sustainable. But as of any plant, when you put it in the ground, there's a little bit of shock. And depending on what kind of weather we have here in Oklahoma and Tulsa, you may have to water for a good 4 to 6 weeks continuously until they get over the stress and get established. And then one of the last things I want to talk about is just the maintenance. Folks ask a lot about maintenance, about pollinator gardens, and there is a little bit of maintenance, but not a whole lot. It's really kind of a passion of love for me. Sometimes things will just mysteriously grow there that a bird has graciously deposited for me. And sometimes, depending on the plant, I'll actually replant it somewhere else in the yard. But one of the things is this last picture I took a few years back, predation does happen. So I went with a house that had no garden to putting in one of these gardens. And the next thing I know, I have praying mantises predating against monarchs. I have hummingbirds that are coming in and utilizing the resources. I have now hawks and owls that are chasing other birds. So it's pretty amazing, but I wouldn't stress out too much about it. It is what it is. It's part of the food web. It's part of the cycle, and it's part of that connectiveness. And then lastly, I talked about earlier, the community resiliency project, Yard by Yard. This is a great project to really, get your project or get your garden kind of recognized. This is a good way to communicate within your neighborhood or at your school, with your neighbors, with the community. You can register your garden. There are all types of variables that are involved in being part of the Yard by Yard program, but it's all doable. It's all really nature and earth friendly, with putting in habitats, utilizing rain barrels, planting native plants, native trees, things that are going to help those connections and everything work harmoniously. And I think that's it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Rick. That you always share such a wealth of information, and I always learn so much. And it is an exciting time of year to see all these plants starting to come back, and so appreciate you putting some context to some of those. And I think Morgan may be helping to navigate some of the questions here, but as she comes online here, there's a couple questions there. One question came up about working with NRCS, and I guess they might utilize some chemicals. And if you had any comment there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long, hot topic over the past few years, especially with pre-emergence like Roundup. I mean, it's really tough when you start a garden and you need to like change the landscape and it's full of either Bermuda or fescue. And I mean, it's short of taking like a front end loader or a skid loader or a bulldozer or something. Um, it's a lot of work, and it takes time, and it's hard. When we converted the Crow Creek Meadow, we first started with cardboard, and then we tried to mulch it, and then we used straw, and it still it's been a battle. And there has been an occasion where we've had to, because of city ordinances, we've had to spray some of the front curb of the street off of 33rd Place, just because it's such a task. I can't speak directly about NRCS and their practices. I know they're a great resource, as well as the Xerces Society and the Kerr Center. A lot of the resources that we share with folks who are starting habitats, those folks produce those. The Xerces Society is the main contributor to that Essential 12 list, and the Kerr Center has helped develop and has lots of resources about the different milkweeds and what counties of Oklahoma they're found. Okies for Monarchs has worked with those groups as well, and so yeah, it's a hard battle, because of the circumstances that were put in with some of these really non-native species.
Mhm.
And it's if you're gonna do it, expect a lot of work by hand for sure.
Yeah. Someone else put in the chat here, and I too have battled this because when I moved in, we had nutgrass, sedge, and just battling that. I know for me, it's just continued plants that that take over where that sedge was, but it is a battle, and harsh chemicals are only way to like really get it out officially. But I haven't gone
Yeah,
down.
it's it's about kind of controlling the variables, and so without using the chemicals, you're gonna have to have the labor of love. But also, like if you're at the zoo, we use a lot of mulch. We use different barriers such as railroad ties, raised beds, metal edging, kind of things to help prevent the encroachment of these grasses. When you're mowing, mow away, don't have your mower blowing into your habitat, and so on and so on. But even with all the steps that we take, there's still, there's just some things you can't control, like birds and other situations where things just crop up. But the grass is the biggest battle for sure.
Yeah. And I'm noticing several folks in here are asking about where to buy plants outside of Tulsa as well. And I
Oh,
think you did mention Monarch Watch for milkweed. Do you have any other resources that you would suggest for Oklahoma, but also outside of Oklahoma, if people are trying to really identify what they should be planting in their area?
yeah, I can tell you, if you go, instead of me just sitting here talking about it, you can go to Okies for Monarch's website, and there is, and I believe there's even one on the Sustainability Alliance website in the Monarch section, where to buy plants. And there is a list that's been generated. Mind you, it needs to be updated. I'll admit that. We're working on that. But it has a whole list of nurseries throughout Oklahoma that you can buy plants. And so unfortunately, I'm sorry, I don't have them all memorized.
Yeah.
But I can tell you some of the ones in Tulsa here recently that are good is like Real Farms is a great place. A New Leaf is really up their game with natives. there's an organization called the Across the Prairie, and so look them up. They have a Facebook page. And yeah, I don't know if I said Grumpy's is a place to get natives, but the list, there is a list out there, and I would go to Okies for Monarchs or to Sustainability Alliance, and there's a link you can click on, and it'll bring it up.
Great. Yeah, and it looks like Teresa put in the chats where to find milkweed as well, and a couple other folks are offering some suggestions there. So so that's really great. And then someone else was saying there is the Audubon Society is having their native plant sale coming up May 20th through the 21st, and I know that's where I've bought a lot of plants over the years too. So we got lots of different opportunities coming up, and the farmers market. I get a lot of native plants there. So for those that are in Tulsa or outside of Tulsa, your farmers market might be a great resource for those native plants.
This fall, we'll have the Monarchs on the Mountain celebration it's actually moved from Turkey Mountain to Chandler Park. And we will have plant vendors as well there that will have fall plants for fall plantings specifically. And so I've learned when there are these opportunities to get plants that the word gets out really quickly. And so if you're really looking for something specific and it's the first day of that sale, like the Philbrook event that's tomorrow, I would get there right when it opens, because the demand is tremendous. And there's actually Okies for Monarchs, the OMPC, we've been talking with different plant vendors, and really there's a whole group that's being formed, kind of a new approach to really pivoting to where the supply can meet the demand. And that's really an issue right now. There's not enough plant vendors that have the material that's required or demanded by people who are wanting to put in habitats.
Right. We do have a couple of other questions here. Do you mind if we get to some of those?
Sure.
Excellent. We've got one here from Courtney. She's asking, are there some resources for helping homeowners that want to have a pollinator habitat, but are worried about city ordinances, or for those homeowners that are part of an HOA that has rules prohibiting grass or plants over 6 inches tall?
Yeah.
This is a common one. Yeah.
Yeah. The best thing to do is come up with a plan. There's plant lists. There's one on the Sustainability Alliance, a plant list that actually for plants for Tulsa that gives the amount of water they need, the amount of light they need, and how tall they're going to get. So if you're in a situation where you need to be within a certain regulatory type situation of how big or how much, I would really kind of get a plan and get that designed out, and then maybe go to the one of those homeowner association meetings and kind of present your project and kind of reassure them that this is what your plan is and this is what's going to happen. And instead of just trying to do it and then hope for the best, I've found the best way to get through some of these hurdles is just through communication. There's a blog that I wrote a few years back on Okies for Monarchs about city ordinances, and the main takeaway from that is communicating. Most times the city ordinance folks do not have the manpower nor the bandwidth to be driving around throughout the Tulsa County looking for folks who are putting in habitats that may be going about it the wrong way. 99% of the time, the reason why people are getting friction from it is from their neighbors. So it's good to go ahead and have those conversations with your neighbors first. Tell them what your plan is. Show them pictures. And then as far as the city ordinances themselves, speaking to those folks and having a meeting a few years back, they're not concerned. I say this laughingly, but it's the truth. When I left the meeting, I felt like if you could plant an M&M and something would grow, they would be okay with that. Like they just don't they're not concerned with the structure and makeup of your yard. What they're concerned with is vision, safety. You have your yard, you have your sidewalk, and then you have that little swath sometimes of grass that's between the sidewalk and then the curb. Don't plant anything there. Also, don't plant anything right up to the sidewalk. Things along your driveway, and there are some plants that are going to be, I mean, to stay within a 6-inch or 5-inch, that's really hard. So, have a really good plan, and plants that are going to exceed more than 6 inches, try to plant those farther back towards your house or towards a wall, but also take into consideration how much sun they're going to need. So depending on how your house faces, they may not do that well because they're not getting the amount of sun that they need. And so they may not even prosper. But HOAs, communication, neighbors, communication, and city ordinances, it's just about safety, 6 inches from a curb, 6 inches from a sidewalk. Don't create a situation where somebody's coming down a sidewalk on a bicycle, like a child on a bicycle, and you have these native plants that are so tall that they can't physically see a car that's backing out of a driveway, or if they're on the street, they can't see a car backing out of the driveway. It's really kind of common sense stuff. And the city ordinance folks, they're super flexible, and they do not want to write people citations. They have a 3 and out program where they give you 3 chances, and they have programs built in. If for some reason you can't mow your lawn because you recently broke your leg, or you have a grandparent or a family member who's ill or elderly that can't take care of their lawn, not just at Habitat, but just in general, they have programs that will have groups of people come out and take care of the lawn for you. So what I learned from them is they really, 1, don't have the bandwidth, and 2, aren't looking to write people up. So the takeaway message is to communicate with your neighbors, have a plan, go to go to the homeowner association meeting, and go from there. I mean,
That's great. Yeah, I would also add on to that too. And I think this is something we try to share is, having signage by those pollinator habitats really helps with that communication piece. So when it comes to your neighbors and, if it looks disheveled or something, if you've got a sign there, it helps show that this is intentional. It's not something that's just an accident that you've, let go. So
yes.
if you can afford signs, definitely look into those.
Yeah, they're easy to obtain. You can even make one if you had to, but I know the one for Monarch Watch, it's about $14 or $15. I have one in my yard. That money goes to support their programs and conservation. Yeah, it's great to have that stuff because it's transparent. You're being informative. I know I've had luck. None of my neighbors said anything to me until after it started growing and they started seeing all the pretty colors and the flowers, and they're like, "Wow, what have you done here? What is this? And what is this?" They weren't even sure what a way station was. So it's good to have that. That just helps with that communication piece and being informing people around you what you're doing. Especially for me, I have a smaller kind of controlled habitat. I know folks who have done their whole entire front yard. And if you're going to go that route, boy, it's really important to be communicative with your neighbors and let them know what you're doing and what your plans are. And then you have to maybe go a little extra in the fall for upkeep, because if you just let it sit natural, even in my habitat, as small as it is, I still cut it down at the end of the growing season. Once the birds and everything's utilized, the seed heads, things have had a chance to reseed themselves, I go ahead and I cut it down just to be polite. It all comes back, Yeah.
That's excellent. So we're going to go ahead and launch the exit poll now. I know there are probably still more questions that you all have, but we just have a few announcements after this exit poll that we'd love for you guys to stick around for. And then afterwards, we are going to be sticking around for another 15 minutes or so. If you want to have a chance to ask questions directly to Rick, or just hang out with us and chit chat about the wonderful content that we've learned about today.
Yes, thank you again, Rick. Amazing. Love all that you covered, and I really loved hearing that you felt ODOT is doing a really good job on the linear habitat. That's good to hear as another resource that's out there to help uh, um, offset the loss of habitat and recreating some. So, thank you for all those
Yeah.
insight and
If you
yeah.
see that, if you see that slide, it's not just Oklahoma too. It's a collaboration with states within the I-35 corridor and others. So yeah, it's a fantastic thing.
Yes, and I know there was another request on those 12 major plans. So if you stick around, maybe you could share that slide again for those guests that want to stick around. But again, poll's been launched. Thank you for taking a moment to take a look at that. Also wanted to let you know we also have our First Steps program this year. We kicked it off in January, and Rabbi Mark Boone Fitzerman is also helping to support that, as well as contact Missy Luckenbach. I think she's still on the call today. If you're interested in participating in the First Step program, she'd love to hear from you. So that's out there as well. We also have, if you're interested in Scorecard, it's our business triple bottom line strategy. If you're interested in that, please take a moment to send Teresa a note if you're interested in learning more about how you can help your business and organization be a little more sustainable and to move in that direction. We also have our TerraScore app. This is the individual app for you to you can download it and really sink into some of those sustainable habitats. We've got a challenge going on right now, but it's an opportunity for you to kind of to meet other folks within the app, but also all kinds of resources that you could share with family and friends, and even with your teammates wherever you are. So use the QR code and you can download that today. Also, we've got another program coming up. It's our B2B Case for Sustainability series, and that will be that our next event will be on solar. So if that of interest, I think that link is in the chat. We'd love to have you join us for that. It should be very interesting. We'll be out at River Spirit Casino Resort on May 18th, and come network and learn more about this, and actually be a delicious breakfast that will be offered by Muskogee Creek Nation. We appreciate their support. I saw there was also a slide about our June 1st Thursday, so stay tuned. We will have that coming up as well. We'd love for you to come back with us as we continue the conversation around sustainability. Thank you again to our sponsors, our lead sponsor, Williams, our neighborhood partners, Public Service Company of Oklahoma, PSO, WindChoice, and our community advocates, Cavanta, the Met, One Oak, Save Our Streams, Spirit Air System, Tulsa Farmers Market, and Sustainable Advisors Alliance. I saw there was an updated slide there from the Tulsa Farmers Market. We might slip back there. And Morgan, did you have something to add there, or Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I did, this slide was supposed to be in there earlier, but I did want to say too that we are actually going to be at the Tulsa Farmers Market on Saturday, May 20th, and we're going to have a booth there. So we'd love, if you haven't been to the market before, try coming out on that date. We're going to have a really fun activity at our booth to help you learn about the market, to get to know the vendors, and to feel really excited about shopping local, supporting environmentally conscious producers, and reducing your carbon footprint to boot. And there also was a slide next, I think, with the Monarchs on the Mountain Festival that Rick was talking about earlier. This is the save the date. It's going to be, like he said, at Chandler Park this year instead of Turkey Mountain. So definitely, if this presentation was any interest to you, check out this festival. It's wonderful. There's so much to do and so much fun to be had. So we hope we see you there.